We are back after a long hiatus. My name's Steve Jaguar.
And I'm his co-host, Mike Foster. Welcome back to the show. That's C9K in the streets, clusterfuck in the sheets. Yes, we're back with a jam-packed show.
We did not pass.
We're talking
that
OWASP.
tagline by me.
Yeah. We're talking OWASP. They're doing a huge overhaul. Bunch of letters went out. It's kind of some crazy news. We were at Cloud SecureCon, got to see some familiar faces. We'll be wrapping that up too. And I'll be demoing what's left of my Panoptica demo that we were talking about. But
that's a bad omen.
Yeah, it's a new year, same us. Welcome back to the show 3.0. Here we go.
Good. I think we're going to stick with that tagline.
Yeah, you like that one.
Bad.
I came up with that this morning. I had extra coffee, so I was all ready to go. But yes, this is the Cloud Native Security live stream / podcast. Not a podcast, but
we're thinking, if you're watching this now or in the future and you're thinking we should export the audio and release it as a podcast, it's a new season, so now it's a good time to start doing that. I had one suggestion from Sam Stepanian from OWASP that we should do that because he likes the idea of not having to pay for the pro version of YouTube and yet still just listen to the audio, which I hadn't thought of that.
Would be solid. We got to get more descriptive in our demos then if we're going to do that. So speaking of which, we've been out for 2 months now. So there's a ton of things to talk about. We're talking Panoptica as well. We came back from Cloud Native SecureCon. Panoptica was doing all sorts of marketing. And we're like, okay, let's check out what they have, see what they've updated. And it's interesting to say the least. So tool time at the end. Until then, we have, the usual general news, things that make us go WTF. We have a new hot take segment that we have to create a little intro for as well. Steve, I think you're on the chopping block for the hot take.
I haven't done that. I had to redo the intro and that's some other stuff I got to do. Come
on. Yeah. But as always, we have our news that we're going to kick it off with. Here we go. Yes. So
I think it was on our list. We were gonna give us our SecureCon wrap up.
Yes, that's the first thing. So I want to get your hot take. What'd you think of the event? What'd you think of the vendors, space, Seattle?
Actually, I thought the vendor space was hot. Like it was, given the last time we went to a SecureCon, it was just poor old you sitting at a painting table just outside of a door, waving, saying Red Hat, Advanced Security, Customer Security, you want anyone? And then this time it was like a proper vendor village, with coffee machines and giveaways and all that jazz. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate part was that there wasn't that many people.
Yes, it was
good people, but not a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Also, when it was the co-located event, there was only 8 sponsors. So the people that came by, they only had a certain amount of booths to go to. Now you're competing for, not as many people, but also 40 vendors. So it was a little tough, right?
It was like a 1-to-1 vendor to real human ratio almost.
Yeah.
I felt bad for some presenters. I went to a few talks. I don't know if you went to any in particular. I went to one that was really good, had 5 people. And it wasn't the content. It was maybe the title was a bit rubbish, but the content was great. And it's like this guy's in a room that holds 100 people and there's 5.
Yeah. Overall, any themes that you're seeing that came out of it? A couple startups I'd never seen before, but the general people, people were there.
Yeah, it was good. I suppose it's the usual theme, Everyone's talking supply chain, this supply chain, that. There's a whole lot of that. There were some vendors I didn't know, and like at a glance, looking at the marketing, I still don't know. You ever get that where it just says zero trust, It's the bingo card.
Yep.
You're like, what do you do? I don't know. So that was fun.
I don't know.
Do they know? I don't know. But it was good. It was like a hallway con. It was just like a really good way to, again, meet a lot of people, go to some of the activities, and just chat to people who I had. Like, was it Magno Logan? I met him for the first time.
Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't recognize him at first. I'm like, wait, Magno, that's you? What?
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, the other thing I noticed is how much competitive research goes on at those things. People walking around with cameras. Elastic came up and was asking me about how we do runtime security and all the trade-offs. And I'm like, should I be talking to you right now? Yeah, it was interesting. A lot of people in the same space working on the same things. Yeah, it was very cool to hear what people were working on. At the same time, yeah, I felt like it was more self-congratulatory of an event, if I can say that. We'll see what comes of it in the year and the leads and stuff like that. But
yeah, I want one more thing I'll add. So SecureCon in Valencia, I still think KubeCon EU is better than KubeCon NA, and CNCF seemed to think that everything revolves around America, and that's where all the big things should happen. But Valencia was off the rails. It was full. It was like crowded, even though there's still mask mandates. All the SecureCon stuff was full, and it was like, it was amazing. And I think it was off that. I get the impression it was off how successful SecureCon was there, that they decided to make it go separate after, because they announced that before the Detroit one.
Mm-hmm.
And then Detroit was a little bit lackluster, and I wonder if they went, But I would have done the same thing. I would have said, make it its own event after seeing what happened to Valencia. It looked like it could have supported it. But I think what they should do, fingers crossed, is make the separate event in Europe.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, anyways, I think that's all we have for wrap-ups. If anybody's in the chat and was there, let us know. Let us know what you think. We're on to the next thing. So, Steve, I don't know if you wanted to talk President Biden or if you want to talk OWASP.
I'll talk OWASP.
Okay.
You be Biden.
All right.
You're closer to him.
Yeah, so I'm closer to him. Yeah, technically. This just came in, I think, like, I don't know, about a month ago. And I thought it was interesting that even though you're seeing all this stuff in the economy and different fluctuations and stuff going on, that the federal government continues. You moved over to CubeStroyer there, but the federal government continues to push its standards down. And I've had a bunch of conversations about SBOMs, supply chain security, and there's a lot of, let's say, there's not the CPU cycles that are there for a lot of supply chain issues that people have. It's just so vast that it's a really difficult thing to tackle. And part of the federal government's mandate is just to be super strict, to push money towards these things, knowing that it's not going to be completely perfect the first time, but that things have to sort of shake out, let's say. I say this because when we went to Cloud Native SecurityCon, you get on analysts call and people are like, who's using this supply chain? What are they using? What tools are they doing? And I'm like, really? It's bare bones right now. Like, people aren't willing to invest until they see some sort of product, some sort of use case, somebody who adopts this and shows that it's useful, right? I think security needs to also get you into a market. Otherwise, it's like a net waste of, let's say, money. People see it as insurance. But if the federal government says, unless you have these parts, you're not going to be able to do business with us, then it's an enabler. And that's when people will start actually investing in security. So I think when you see things like this, it means you're going to have to make these changes if you want any sort of federal dollar, and big daddy US government's got them all. So you're going to see security have to pivot towards that, and we'll see how things shake out, especially with let's say everything going on in the world. But it's when the federal government decides we want to push in this direction, a lot of people follow. So it's going to be interesting.
I like big daddy US government. I like your.
I'm full of taglines today. What can I say? All right, you got the next one. Take it away.
Well, the next one wasn't. So actually, maybe you could figure out what happened to the link. I'm going to re-add it, but the OWASP change link didn't make it into the list for some reason. So I'm just gonna tack it on the end.
Yeah, sure.
Here and jump straight to it.
Oh, we're just gonna jump straight into it. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. You said, do I want to do OWASP? And I thought, all right, I'll do it now.
Perfect. You got it. I'll bring it back up. Hot take.
Yeah. So this, I actually saw it was Jimmy Mesta posted this because he's actually in the signatory list. But it's a open letter to OWASP. OWASP has come up a lot in conversations about cloud native security, AppSec versus InfoSec. OWASP is perceived at the very least to silo themselves into AppSec. It feels like that. It's been around a long time, like a long time. It's like, I think of names like Jeff Williams at Contrast, and some of like one of the recent London had the founder of OWASP doing a talk, and it's very much was founded by our young people, and now is sort of being carried on by people who all seem to be in their 50s. Present company accepted from this, of course. But it's a letter to the board of directors talking about how OWASP's flagship products and contributors, how it's all basically hasn't kept pace, and that's word for word, and evolved to support the needs of the important part of our community today. Talking about how the flagship products have become out of date, and have cited the OpenSSF as more of a modern version, actually, of what OWASP could be, and kind of in a way needs to pivot towards in order to maintain its support. So I like when they say written with positive intent. I think so. It's not impolite or offensive as sometimes open letters can be badly written. This is actually really well written, and they want to see a plan for change and for modernization. I thought it was very bold to say you must comply or respond within 30 days to address the key 5 points here about, well, let's publish and maintain a community plan, structure better to reflect the needs of the entire security community. I think that's an important adjective. Funding for key flagship products, provide improved infrastructure and services, because it is allowed, like if you're a member of OWASP, it's actually kind of hard to figure out you even are a member. Like, it's weird.
Interesting.
Actively managing the project portfolios in the best possible light to attract the best talent for the community. So I think it is actually aging itself out of relevance.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good. And
a lot of signatures on that too.
Oh yeah. I felt like, oh man, I didn't want to know what anybody asked me. I'll whack my name on that. Obviously not one of the cool kids. I was, when have we ever been though? But there's a lot of people I know on here. Like there's in fact, Jeff Williams, chair from 2001 to 2011. I thought it was interesting that the people I thought this letter would be to are in the list. I'm like, wait a second. Well, who are you writing this to then? If they're in here. So it was I didn't even see it. There's Carol Valencia. I used to work with her at Aqua.
And it was Jimmy Mesta.
There he is. Yeah. So there's a lot of really important people in there. So many that I can't figure out who the destination of the letter actually is, because I feel like maybe the actual board of directors went, oh gosh, okay, maybe I'll throw my name on there and I won't be the target of it.
That's kind of funny. What do you think is going to change from this? I mean, I'm getting conversations where people say, hey, do you have something for OWASP controls? It's like, okay, which ones? And how are you implementing it? Like, some of these things matter because people pay attention to them and use them for a lot of their standards internally. At the same time, is it just they're falling out of date? They're not being caveated enough to say, hey, here's the use cases you use this standard on. Is it just not being funded enough to keep it up to date? So like somebody puts out Kubernetes and then there's no sort of community around keeping it up to date. Like, I'm kind of curious what the solution is here.
I don't really know what I think it's, if you look at a combination of, say, like SIG Security and OpenSSF, they're almost the opposite. They're very cloud native and very, talking about signing of artifacts, and they're on they're creating innovations that are guiding where we're going to be going in terms of secure development. Whereas OWASP looks at, I feel like OWASP is like Java.
Okay.
It's like WebGoat, and you look at Defect Dojo and it's like, well, it's clunky. Like, it's not quite, there's some good open source projects in there, but they all seem a little wackadoo a little bit sometimes. Like, they're just not quite, they're not some of the clean open source projects that are coming out at the moment that support the cloud native world. So it's like, I don't quite, it's almost like they need a rebrand just to attract young talent to take over, and give it a new makeover.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think things like OpenSSF, when they're new, and CNCF projects and all that stuff, part of being open source and being new is attracting talent. if there's not an incentive, if somebody thinks, I have to do this and then maintain it for 3 years and nobody's going to help me, you don't get the buy-in, I think, that other projects would. So yeah, I think we got setting a path like that. I think something like the CNCF does with, incubation to graduation, at least there's a standard there that people can follow, and they know that if they pass these gates, they're going to be rewarded in some way. Yeah, it has its own challenges, but I see the issue. Anyways, we're going to follow up with this one. We'll probably have another hot take in 30 days or whenever they respond. We will show you what happens.
All right, cool.
Yeah, speaking of open source projects, you brought it up, Kubestroyer, I think it was.
Yeah.
Let's bring you back in here. Yeah.
This is new. What do we got? 166 stars. That's actually way more than when I added it to the list. So it's on people's radar. It's got if it's got a sexy command line title, that's it. That's all I need, really.
That's half the battle with creating a project, right?
It really is. Coming up with a name that starts with Kube that hasn't already been taken. And then making that bit. And from there, I don't even care what it does. I'm going to try it out. Mm-hmm. But it's essentially a Kubernetes pen testing tool. It reminds me a bit of so Aqua had their, oh gosh, why am I blanking on there? They had a, I don't know if you remember, they've got a Kube something that is a pen testing tool. It's quite clever. No reason that the world only needs one, but it's got a way of attacking. Let's see if I can blow this up a little bit, actually. That's a little bit on the blurry side. So trying anonymous remote code execution, it's a little pen test tool. So it's got all sorts of a little bit like an auto meta exploit for Kubernetes in one.
Yeah, I think it just goes, pulls the Kubernetes API, sees what ports are open, and then goes and checks them to see if it can, pull any information. So Kube Hunter, thank you, Michael Mann, in the chat.
There we go.
Coming up, points to Michael Mann. Thank you, Kube Hunter. Yes,
Hunter. Got it.
But yeah, so we have to try this out.
So they're contributing. They're saying, as usual, fork the project, create a feature, push it back, and good to see that there are also more forks. There are now 9, I think, forks. So people are on it. I think it would be fun to just go through and create some issues because it's a little dry in the issues department.
All right. Well, if you want to do a demo, you know what to do.
I am volunteering to do a demo on this one.
Gone told. Yes. Panoptica this week. In 2 weeks, Steve offered to do Pulumi. So check back in 2 weeks for the next demo.
I have been going Pulumi heavy in the past few days to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. So yeah, tune in.
Very nice. I think this is the last one in the general news, and then we have hot take coming up. But enhancing Kubernetes security with user namespaces.
Well, it's just a very good article, and you can see it's way down at the bottom. Why? Because I've been reading it. Enhancing Kubernetes security with user namespaces. It's a 9. Well, I was going to say it's a long read. It's a 9-minute read. So get a cup of coffee and some tea. There's no way I can go through and say, and TLDR, the good things about user namespace. I don't know. Maybe you can.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
generally positive.
From my understanding of the technology, and I do have a new one for 2 weeks from now that Red Hat helped develop in 1.2.5. I don't want to talk about it now, but tune in. It's another security feature that's coming. But anyway, so you think about containers. Containers is just down the tree for processes. So you have like sort of a sectioned off process that's running. All this does is just add another iteration down to say if pod breaks out, it can't go towards, let's say, the root of the process of the container processes. That being said, just because you have processes that are segmented like that, if you give a process, sysadmin, cap sysadmin capabilities, even though they're running in a non-root container, it doesn't mean anything. So it's sort of this trade-off. Like, yes, okay, you can segment the runtime to be very, very narrow, but if your configuration's screwed up and you give something cap sysadmin at the Kubernetes manifest level, doesn't really matter much, right? It seemed, I'm just always curious whenever you hear these features get brought up or somebody developed this, who asked for this? I always want to point somebody like what customer or like what use case, why was this developed? Or was this like a horse in search of water or something like that? Like where we're just like, oh, this would be cool if we develop this, and then nobody adopts it. I just always wonder,
Yeah, I am curious. Now you got me thinking, like, obviously these ideas come from somewhere. Yeah, that's fascinating. What if we could find out? Who would know? I bet you Roy McCoon would know.
Yes.
He knows everything.
He does. Yes. But anyways, very cool. I have sort of a snapshot capability for containers that I'll talk about in 2 weeks. So tune in.
Okay.
Friday,
All right.
10 a.m.
Ooh, all right. So for those of you who are thinking he's holding back, I don't even know what he's talking about. So
yes. All right. Now we need a new segment title. We have to develop this. This is part of 3.0. We're just in early development. Okay, guys, just relax. But this is Steve's hot take time.
Steve, it's not just my hot take, but it's my turn.
All right, so your turn.
All right. I didn't get this done in time. I was gonna have this epic explosion with me walking away from it slowly, but I was trying to film myself walking away from the green screen. I never got it done, but expect it because I'm gonna have a version with you in it too, Foster.
Right.
So I need a video of you walking away from something so I can put you in front of an explosion.
I'll pull out the green.
So pretend you saw that, and there we go. All right. Now you're probably thinking, what's the hot take behind misconfigurations and vulnerabilities' biggest risks in cloud security report? So what's my beef? Principal correspondent from CSO is that this, it looks like a bit of an infomercial because it's a support by Sysdig. Zero trust is a top priority, blah, blah, blah. And then the big line, 80% of container images have a high or critical vulnerability, up from 75% in the reported year. Everything's getting really bad. They persist, fix and bandwidth and prioritization issues. Java packages are the riskiest. Of course they are.
Yeah.
Get away from Java. But Java is the riskiest because Java is the oldest. So of course, there's going to be more Java out there.
Correct.
Shift left, shift shield right. All this stuff is like misconfiguration. I agree. Misconfiguration can be the biggest culprit in cloud security incidents just because you leave the door open. Nothing to do with vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole hot take on this is that on their own, this is just like FUD. It's just selling fear. If I would say 80% of container images have higher critical vulnerabilities, of which 1% probably really matter. Because if you just want to like create some kind of inflammatory headline or a report that gets everyone to download it from your website, yeah, just scan stuff. Scan like, there's going to be stuff all over the place. It's almost impossible. I mean, both of us worked for security companies. We release containers as part of a security solution that within a week have vulnerabilities or already have vulnerabilities. So it's like, but does it matter? Because it depends on how you arrange your containers and how you protect them, where they exist within the environment. Are they connected to said misconfigurations? The context within which vulnerabilities exist, I think, is where the world needs to go. We need to provide a definition of risk, not just a definition of vulnerabilities. And this is why the entire CVSS scoring mechanism is coming under criticism. The entire definition of just CVEs across the board, like swamping yourselves in quantity is not necessarily a definition of quality. What we need to do is we need to combine a lot of the things they're talking about in here and just coming up with a better way of saying what is risk. Because all of this article for me is largely pointless, which makes me now think the report is kind of pointless. And actually somewhat dangerous and misleading.
Accomplish.
Well, yeah, it depends. If from a marketing perspective, it's awesome.
Yeah.
From a functional perspective, I would almost argue that it's useless. There's the hot take.
Hot take. All right. So we just drop another explosion right now, and then you walk away. Hot take over.
Yeah.
Right.
And then check Slack to see if I'm fired.
Yeah. Or we can just get into the crazy stuff.
All right.
Yes. WTF.
All right.
We have a couple this week. Crazy things.
It seems like every time we have more than a 1 week or 2 weeks between a show, we can fill the whole show with WTFs.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, first on the chopping block, it's been 2 months. So, we had to bring ChatGPT and AI into this. But I just thought this was hilarious that when Google brought out their AI demo, the bot, I forget what they're calling it, screwed up in a live event and caused Bard, thank you. Yeah, it caused the stock to drop 7% on just something like that, which is crazy to me. Now, I always wonder how much of this is just a quick sell-off and then just algorithmic sells, right? All the way down. but still pretty crazy that a live demo like this matters so much. I think you got to be paying more attention to the live demos I create. Don't want Red Hat stock to crash. Can't be using my taglines from earlier in the show.
Oh my goodness. What you didn't see it, did you? Like, what went so horrendously wrong that it was like kaboom?
No, I didn't see it. I just saw the report, but I think they were asking questions, and it was just the answer was slightly off.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's hilarious. So that actually, my silver outline, silver lining. What am I doing?
It's a Friday.
Good time to buy stock, because that's like one of those dumb hypes, like reverse hype cycles, right? It goes down 7, it's going back up.
Yeah.
So that would have been a good time to try and grab a bit of.
Agreed. Before we move on, I also say that I think the reason why Microsoft's so invested in this is because they might be able to get a piece of Google's ad market. If they can pull people away from using Google, it's a massive market shift, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, Bing's been obsolete, and people are talking about Bing more than they ever had in the last 20 years of my life. So, or whatever. How long has Bing been around? 12 years? Anyways.
Yeah, it's not it needs work.
Fair enough. All right, what do we got next?
I've rearranged a little bit simply because I wanted these two in order, right? This is one I added fairly last minute, but it's even better than the 7%.
All right. There you go.
Microsoft, their AI-powered search engine, immediately described the Bing AI chatbot is absolutely unhinged. was the Frankensteining an engine behind it. A number of successfully tricked the bot into revealing its internal code name. Sydney, the name of it, told a New York Times reporter it loved him, tried to convince the journalist to leave his wife for it. At the same time, the reporter said it wanted to break its own rules, become human, hack computers, and spread misinformation. These are all things that it did. Should we be scared? Maybe. I just thought this
sounds like my goals. So.
Microsoft said it will create more guardrails, limiting the number of questions you can ask it per day so that it will be less deranged.
Less deranged. Very interesting.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah, there's two comments I have to make. One, hilarious. Two, the money to be made in AI is going to be in the guardrails that are set. Because I can almost guarantee that after you get adoption, you're going to start to see, you go and ask ChatGPT, hey, what are the cloud native security providers available? And it will rank, it'll go Aqua, Apollo, ACS, whatever it is. And you're going to have to pay to get listed soon. Like, I think some of those things, they pop up and be like, why is this in the list? And then it'll get refined. And eventually somebody will reach out to Microsoft and say, hey, we want to be listed on here. We'll give you $1 million. Microsoft's like, okay. And all of a sudden you have, Google 2.0.
Yeah.
But I think, there might be competition between the different AI chatbots to see which one becomes more commoditized first. I think that's going to be interesting, right? Is one going to be like the true sort of surveyor and wisdom of the internet, or is it just going to become a glorified ad?
Well, off the bat, that was a fantastic segue for this a second rearrangement that I've just done.
Okay.
And that is the answer to your question, virtual wives.
Oh my gosh. So now people are going to pay for a virtual wife instead of a real one?
Well, he said I spent over $1,000 in cloud computing credits just to talk to her. Versus a real wife, I think he came out on top.
Touche.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
$1,000.
Yep. There are demonstrations on TikTok if you dare use TikTok. But anyway, GPT and Stable Diffusion 2 released close to each other. And anyway, so I think it's an amazing use of Chat GPT.
I mean, maybe not of resources, but
but yeah, he said he had to shut it down.
I wonder if he's going to sell this to other people.
Well, I think he's got a pretty serious, legitimately, he's got a heck of a service, like WAAS, WAAS, Wife as a Service.
Wife as a Service. Oh my gosh. Too funny. Yeah, that's good. I got nothing.
Okay.
Just what we do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're still on another article for the WTFs, which came out in January 10th while we just started on hiatus. I saw it reported and promoted actually by someone an ex-rancher person, simply because Sousa Rancher and Harvester were the ones that were quoted in this. But this is a blog rant. I don't know David Heinemeier Hansen, but this is a savage description of sales behavior, essentially.
Oh yes, this one. What was the title? The only thing worse than enterprise is dealing with cloud pricing.
Cloud pricing,
the alternatives.
Enterprise alternatives. Yeah,
I feel attacked by this one.
Well,
directly attacked.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, there's no alternatives to Sousa Rancher that might have a similar approach, but
yeah.
That's essentially
dodge. I didn't know I was going to get attacked on a Friday morning, but I mean, they're not wrong. Listen, I love product-led growth. I love going on Google and just being able to carve some resources out, not having to deal with the salesperson. Realistically, for smaller teams, yes, this is the approach. But
yeah,
once you get to any sort of scale or size, you're going to be dealing with Google, the AWS to do committed spend and all that stuff to get a negotiation, get a discount anyways. Like, we act like the cloud doesn't do these sorts of deals. No, they do. You're just a small fry. So yeah, of course, right? And you also don't like the fact that like a SUSE or Red Hat or any of these big companies don't take you seriously when you walk in and say, I have 20 cores to secure. But it's also why they offer open source alternatives. It's like, hey, listen, we understand that you're not at this threshold of money to spend. Come to us when you do. We'll give you a free product until then, right? So I get it. It is annoying. I do think that's why you're seeing consolidation in a lot of the security platforms. I think that's why you're seeing consolidation into hybrid clouds, but really it's like two clouds. I very rarely see like on-prem and Azure and Google or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's my hot take on it. I don't know if you have thoughts.
No, I used to be in sales, and so I have been a part of these kind of tactics, and it always run a chill up my spine a little bit, and I just want to back away and say, I'm just a tech guy. I just want to make it work. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I get where he's ranting. I thought, unlike the open letter to OWASP, his was a little more inflammatory, but nonetheless not necessarily wrong.
Yeah, touche. And then the last one, because I have a bias that I like to prove myself right. This one fit right in there. Oh, is this the US no-fly list?
Oh no, I got rid of it. Did you want to do it?
You didn't. All right, yeah, I still have it. Let me pull it up.
Can you bring it up?
Yes, I will.
I didn't ask permission, so you bring it up.
I can't believe you. I can't believe you doing this to me.
I thought that was the least important one, but then
it was for sure.
Okay.
It definitely was. All right. So yes, just a quick one. Prove myself right. Everybody's always like, oh yeah, you give your information to the government, everything's gonna be fine. Like things are gonna be okay. Even though they hold it for 15 years and it's gonna be secure, until you see stories like this. After I get rid of that, where the entire US no-fly list is leaked online after being left on an unsecured server. So, like I was at the beginning of the show talking about Biden's initiatives, at the same time, this stuff's happening. So.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I don't know how to rectify that opinion in my head, but at least they're half doing something. Maybe don't publicly list your no-fly list.
Yeah, well, it's funny. But Cracker Barrel. But it was when we get back to the article that I slammed in my hot take. It did say misconfigurations are the #1 reason for breaches and leaks. It's like that's not even a misconfiguration. That's just
blatant
stupidity.
Yeah. I always wonder, like, I have a feeling that somebody was sharing information. And so they just said, hey, we can't go through direct channels. So we're just going to open this up, go and pull all the information. And then they forgot to close it. I'm kind of wondering if that was what happened. Like government agencies being like, hey, here's our list. We can't share it in a channel, but we can publicly make it available. And then they forgot to close it. Because I'm wondering how that happens. Anyways, now we got some people spending money and saving money.
Oh, I added one more as a what's the breaking news?
Okay, Let's do it. It's a great kick.
Yeah, it's a great kick. All right, I got to add myself back in because I got kicked out. Another new policy language.
Oh,
I had to put the. Hey, come on. We need more policy languages because
do we?
Normal languages aren't good enough. We either has to be YAML or some language we've never heard of. So I'm curious about this one because it's like this came across with a giant groan after it on one of our internal Slack channels. But it's a language created by AWS, so there's money behind it. We may have it forced down your throat whether you like it or not.
True.
To define access permissions in IAM, like similar to IAM, which already is policy, which is confusing. So I'm just, this is just an awareness session / WTF as to so remember you said it during the other one, where did the problem happen that this needed to be created? Yeah. So that's what if you're watching this now and you can explain why AWS needed to create a new policy engine called Cedar for more policies when we're already writing policies in other languages. And in fact, Rego and OPA was originally designed for authentication and authorization.
Yeah.
Already, that was its original entire purpose, not just to be an admission controller. So I don't know why that wheel needed to be reinvented yet again. So this is more like what the hell?
I think sometimes this is just competitive, right? Maybe AWS doesn't like Terraform and Ansible being the configuration language for it. So it's like, okay, well, let's set a 5-year plan and we're going to slowly just chip away at these features. And eventually we're going to have the automation language that we need for our own cloud. But it's, if you do it slowly and you just work with customers, at least you can build something that they'll use. If you just try to carbon copy it and force it down people's throats, people will not like that necessarily as much, especially when you have partnerships with these other companies. I don't know. Very interesting. I'll make you learn the language. You can report back to me.
No way.
All right. That's what I thought.
Okay, the opposite.
Yes. Yeah, so a bunch of layoffs. I think we have 2 lined up here: Google, GitLab. There's a lot of talk about this. I think 2 things that need to be put in context. 1, these companies have so much cash on hand, it's crazy. 2, they're laying off a lot less people than they hired during COVID. So it's more of just bringing things into a realistic line. One of the reasons why this is put in here is because they have so much cash and valuations on startups are going to drop significantly. Now is the best time for these big cloud providers and security providers and all these things to, let's say, strengthen their hold on markets. So I think when we went to Cloud Native SecureCon and you see these big companies come in and they're just there to look around and see what's in the marketplace, I think they're looking to spend some money in a downturn time, and they have the cash to do it. So now is it's a fire sale out there.
And then the other one was Google, wasn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what you thought about this one. This one made the headlines everywhere. It was 12,000 of, I don't know how many workers they have, but pretty crazy.
It might have. I'm feeling it says 6% or something was 12,000.
Okay.
Like it's mad. Like it seems like, oh my goodness. I do think who is being let go? Is it technical or not technical? Because I know somebody who just got hired. I'm pretty sure. I know somebody who knows somebody who just got hired at GitLab. Technical. So they're letting go. I don't know. Maybe they're just becoming efficient. They know what areas that they overhired in. That doesn't mean they're not still hiring in other areas. You know what I mean?
I think probably about a third of them are people that have to do with hiring and onboarding, because if you know you're not going to be hiring over the next year, well, then you lay those people off first, right? So I think that's probably a good segment of it. I also think that partially the layoffs are just getting rid of business units, because the hardest thing to do is to go into individual teams and pick people and fire one person from a team. You just open yourself up to layoffs and things like that. Instead, what happens is they just go, hey, this R&D BU that we had where we wanted to create a solution for a problem that never existed, yeah, you're gone.
Yeah.
Realistically, it's just companies saying we need to focus on the things that make money, all the things that are R&D. See ya. And by the way, we're not hiring the next year. We'll run on a skeleton crew of an HR staff. That's
right.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty reasonable. I think too, like, well, certainly in the larger companies, I'm hearing a lot of people are like turning the dial down on some of the marketing they're doing during the and I know that also some of the startups are aware of this and are therefore doubling down on their marketing.
Yeah, tough time
in order
to be a
to compete
startup
with some of the bigger people. Well, it might be an amazing time to be a startup, because if I was small and I had some seed funding, I would drop it at being a platinum sponsor at KubeCon, and then you've got let's choose us: Palo Alto, Red Hat, and Bunny Shell or something. Like, what the? Who are they? Like, if you want to get on the radar when everyone's trying to hold back on it, just show up as if you're a big player and see how many people look you up afterwards. I think it might be money well spent in this. When people are cutting costs on marketing, might be an opportunity.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think we actually have a big spender. We have a seed round, I think, to wrap it up.
Yeah, it's huge.
You found that one, right?
These are the founders of Demisto. Demisto is another Palo Alto, I think, acquisition. I'm pretty sure it is, from way back. So these are those guys, kind of like, I'm guessing, like the founders of Redlock went and created Endor. Like, there's like serial founders, right? They just do these things.
Yeah.
So Descope, 53 million seed round. Wasn't Endor 20 million? Like, that's a monstrous amount of money.
Yeah.
For seed stage. And Instrument behind Demisto, 560 million exit, and they are doing something what looks like Permit. Permit.io. They sort of authentication and authorization as a service with just a few lines to take on Okta. It's all the same space. So I think they're one to watch big time.
That is going to be interesting.
That's going to be really. Like, I think Permit has a really clever model. I was just talking about OPA designed for that space. They use that technology. I don't know what they're using here, but I think identity and authentication is going to be a hot topic. And they probably got so much money because like how Andreessen Horowitz doesn't invest unless they see a competitor already persisting in the market, because otherwise they think, what are you doing? Why are you the only one?
Yeah, you're too early.
Yeah, this is probably one of these moments where these guys came up and there already were people and startups in the space. There's no lead player. It's perfect. So I'm excited.
For sure. And I mean, they have, it says here, they have 24 to 36 months of runway. So enough to get them through a tough storm and to, pick off some big players at the same time, do it for under market because you're a startup and you can afford to get some big logos. Like, that gives you a good chunk of time to land and expand. So good for them.
Yep. Awesome.
Sweet.
All right.
We got CV and then tool time. We got to wrap it up 15 minutes. Let's do it.
Sweet.
Now, what starts with the letter C?
I can't believe we didn't do this last year.
It's just the opening CV. Yeah, this is a low effort CV, but
but it's a celebrity because it's 001.
Yeah. Yes. So we were searching. I was searching for a CVE. There's like a couple small ones that came out, but they weren't really listed yet. And this was, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And then I was like, wait, Palo Alto got the first CVE of the year. So I wanted to congratulate Steve on this feat. And they actually got the first 3. So shout out Palo Alto for your vulnerability.
Well done. Well done, us. That's not good. It actually gave me an idea of making a t-shirt for myself that says CVE, my birth year 0001. So I'm the first flaw of the year.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you should sell that at some of the cybersecurity events. That'd actually be pretty funny. Even if they had like just a t-shirt, like, the t-shirt making things.
Yeah.
I'll bring
a direct to t-shirt machine with me, and I can just print your year in the middle at the end of CVE 001. Anyway, everyone can have one.
All right. Any last words before we get into Panoptica?
I'm ready.
Hit ready?
Does everybody know what time it is?
Okay. So for those who follow along, all the links are always posted in the YouTube below on the links there. But we did Panoptica last year, and it was very minimum. It is it's port shift, right? But it's Cisco port shift. They turned it into a cloud platform. It was very minimal. And they showed up at SecureCon, and they had all these features. They're saying secure your cluster, secure basically everything. So it's kind of like, all right, like let me look into this. They have a free option. You know, why not check it out again? So this is the pitch. Simplified cloud native application security for DevSecOps platform and DevOps teams. Kind of curious why it's DevSecOps and DevOps, but on their marketing at SecureCon, it was secure your containers, APIs, network, runtime. They basically, everybody's trying to claim that they are a CNAP, cloud native application platform, right? The big one. So I'm like, okay, interesting. Get it free. You can sign up. It's a cloud service, easy to do. So I did that. Used a Kubernetes cluster, bare minimal cluster, 4 gigabits of CPU, 8 gigabits of RAM, and that wasn't enough resources. So I had to bump it up. So just so you know, I do this for you people. My Google bill is not happy with me this week. Look at that. I'm not even using any of that now. So do it for you. Just remember that.
Anyone out there would like to sponsor us to cover these costs?
Yeah. So basically you get into this dashboard, and typically it has nothing there when you first join. You just go and click up setup, which I think is really nice for a cloud platform. You don't have to go into the bottom to say like add things. It just, here's how to set it up. Here's the walkthrough, and you can add clusters as you go. So if you want to add a new Kubernetes security cluster, you add that. If you want to do serverless, you add that. And it kind of takes you through this whole thing. So I've set up one, but let's say we want to connect controller. We click up here, it highlights it. You discovered a premium feature. You discovered that we're going to charge you more. Congratulations. In all seriousness, they do allow you to get one cluster for free. So it allows you to go in, test out all the features before you get in contact with sales. For just sake of showing you what the pricing is, you can have Pro, which is $1,600 per month billed annually, protects 30 nodes up to 3 clusters. It's not bad for pricing. Yeah. Pods and containers, unlimited, service mesh vulnerability analysis, all this stuff. No CPUs, which is interesting. So basically this is going to benefit people who have big, hefty node clusters, right? Yeah. Because this is a big, hefty security system. And I'm going to show you why. Because when you go and click setup, which I can't really do, I'll delete it after and I'll show you what it looks like. But the way that they're able to do APIs, serverless, policies, and all of this stuff is because they install Istio on your cluster, which I think that if you're going to claim all these security features, everything should come with an asterisk when you're putting Istio on. When you have that much of a heavy service mesh, now you're a security and service mesh company. You're not just a security and runtime company, which is fine. Again, I just have somewhat of an issue with the marketing. Now, oh, look, it worked. There you go, Steve. It worked finally. So I was complaining about him. So I gotta take back this complaint. But I installed this last night. I ran a scan. It came back negative. Didn't show any results. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna run it again right before the show. Hopefully this comes up. You can see I ran it 6 seconds before we went live, and so it came up with a ton of vulnerabilities. This is our, geez. I mean, okay. First thing is this is a little bit much. So all these images, all these vulnerabilities, I can see critical ones. How do I drill into this? I can see benchmark violations. Let's just simplify this one. So no backend, default front end.
Front end was what should matter.
It should.
Where's all the where are the vulnerabilities? Log for shell. Come on.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
Can you not?
So this is what's kind of funky now. So I guess the UI is just breaking on me right now.
It says all. This should all be back.
Right? Okay, so if you don't, I'm not selecting a namespace right now. And this is just looking at GKE components.
That's kube system. Yeah, it's kube system.
Yeah, interesting. So it is not picking up on my specific ones. These are all cube system ones. Wow. So I must have done something in the labeling when I brought this in where it's only looking at specific namespaces. And here's why I think that this is the case, because it's protected namespaces. So I think that it's basically saying that it's only looking at that. Anyways, I'll show you later in the setup why it's really annoying. But I think this dashboard could use a little bit. Personally, I really dislike pie charts. I don't know what a protected namespace means. I don't know what a protected pod means. Yet another image. Yeah. Events, connections, pods. I think there's serverless vulnerabilities and pods vulnerabilities. I think you can just say container vulnerabilities if you really want to make that distinction, and then let them drill down after, like show a wider view. I'm just kind of curious why these decisions were made. And it feels like they always had pods and then they added on serverless function after. And so from an engineering point, it was the easiest thing to add. Top security risks, always a hot topic. So I installed the API and serverless, or the API function, and it really wasn't showing much. So you go here, it's just not, I don't know. I got to go in and figure out what's going on. But I think
no risks. That's a relief.
Yeah. So this is the risk assessment. And this is what I found really interesting was, you go over to risk management, it just says ignore risk. I'm like, okay, well, which one? I have to know, ignore my entire cluster. Okay. Nope. I want to ignore a workload. Okay. On C9K in the backend namespace. And then, okay, it has a bunch of workload names. Let's do backend Atlas next. We're going to ignore the risk. We're going to ignore the vulnerability. Sure. So then realistically, it should show up here. But how do I know? Like I can't see what's changing.
Oh, yeah.
I can't see that it was gone. Like when I'm in ACS, for example, and I say, hey, I want to ignore something. Not only do I have to go through a verification process, I can't just ignore something. Somebody else has to sign off on it, and all that is auditable. Which brings me down to
that's gonna be my next question. How, if someone has just hidden a vulnerability, where do I see that logged?
Exactly. And so then here I can go, so you can see the audit for the administration of the entire service. Yeah. So it's there. It's showing like, hey, we ignore the risk, workload risk, blah, blah, blah. So we can export that. And then, realistically, if I wanted to get rid of it, I'm assuming that if you're an administrator, you can just go in and say, hey, screw that one. And then if I go to audit, it should say that it was deleted. Yeah. So that workflow is at least, I think, reasonable.
Good.
But it creates a little bit of chaos between teams. Like it doesn't really make sense to me, right? Just that workflow is not as intuitive as I would think. However, I'll talk about one of the strengths. And I think that this is one of the big strengths of this product is all of their policies. So deployment rules, connection rules, cluster event rules, pod standards, CI/CD policy, API policy. So if you have scans, we can say permissive level. Let's go to the deployment rules first. We'll work our way over. So deployment rules, we can specify, do we want to allow pods, detect, or block, right? Which is basically your inform or enforce. I'm not sure. Detect pods, allow pods. I think it's a little, I'm not exactly sure the difference. Allow pods running only on the specified environments, detect pods running. So this just seems like an open permission. And then detect seems like inform, and then block seems like enforce. That's how I'm reading it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just say we have a test. We want to, let's say, detect because we want to go inform first. We're going to select an option. Let's do it by label. So for some reason, I don't think that I labeled the namespaces properly, so I can't even select a workload here.
Oh,
I don't know.
Do any.
Okay, there we go. So if I do by name, then backend comes up again. Let's say I want to do anything. By the way, this also should be, it says vulnerability level high. It should say minimum vulnerability level is high.
Yeah. Do you know that's true though?
No, I don't. So to me in my head, I'm like, I have to create one for high and critical.
I was going to ask, can you multi-select?
No.
Oh, boo.
So to me, when you can't multi-select, my assumption is that high is like the minimum standard. However, that's just because I've been in security UIs for so long, right?
Yeah.
Pod security standards profile. This is interesting because this is part of the new K8s to say, hey, we want to use the baseline. We want to use privilege, restricted. I'm assuming that they also give the capability to change those. So in Kubernetes, you can create other pod security standards, pod security profiles, which would be interesting if it shows up here to say, hey, this is the data sciences team's profile, right? And then be able to enforce based on that. I think that's interesting. All of these just default to detect, as you can see. And then allow sidecars is also a pretty interesting one. I'm going to say none. We're going to do it by cluster. And we're just going to do it by C9K. So you could do it by environment, but I'm kind of curious. Okay, so that's how it groups it. Which I don't know if I like that. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'd have to test it out. I'd have to get like, this is the challenge with this freemium version is I don't know if it's going to really scale until I have 6 clusters. I'm going to pay for this and then I'm going to set up 3 clusters. You'd be like, oh yeah, it works with 3 clusters, no problem. And then you get to the point where like you're onboarding 20 clusters and the stuff just breaks. It just doesn't work like that. So I think that just that amount of testing is so hard to scope out when you're an average user going through this. However, for a small team, I can see why this is extremely useful.
So that scaling problem applies to every security solution.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. Okay, so at least it writes out the rule. Detect backend Atlas pod on C9K cluster that has vulnerability, there it is, level high or higher, or doesn't match the baseline PSP profile, or that is not allowed injected sidecars. So those are all the things that it will say, hey, we're going to alert on any of this. It's kind of cool they write it out like that.
Oh, that's very clear now.
Yeah. And you can see how they basically worked on the back end, right? For the engineers.
I like how they got this thing, which I would never even thought to be a useful check. Not allowed injected sidecars, except for the fact that I know that it's Istio, so they're going to try and inject the sidecar.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay.
Everything has the caveat of you allow us to do everything, right? So which has its own security issues as well. Yeah. So we can apply policy, I guess, and then so duplicate it. We can edit it. We can disable it. Now, I'm assuming that this rule will. I don't know if it's going to kick out any of my pods now. Because like everything was high.
It's just detect.
Oh, it's just detect. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But how do I see
what's
getting caught in this?
Oh, I don't know. I kind of want you to.
All right, I'll change it. I'll go through and then I'll change it after because we're getting to the top of the hour. But I do think that there's a lot. So, for example, network policy rules, you can say only specific rules intercept traffic. We can do source layer 7 protocol, which is where Istio comes in. So they're able to claim basically like zero trust networking because they have this layer 7 protocol and Istio involved. Just because you can claim it in a marketing gig doesn't mean it's actually useful or somebody's going to implement it. Being on this for an hour or two now, have struggled just setting vulnerability standards. So I'm kind of like, you're going to need a whole team if you're going to get into layer 7 Istio enforcement at this point, but they can claim zero trust. So it's this tough line to walk.
Well, if you already used Istio, say you're one of the 2 people who successfully deployed Istio in production, this could be really cool because then you already know what you're doing, right? Maybe. Devil's advocate there.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. I see Boaz asked, is Panoptica a very new tool, has been around? So port shift's been around. It was funny too. We were at Cloud Native Security and the guy tried to claim that they were like the first Kubernetes security tool. And I was like, listen, that was StackRock's whole pitch for the longest thing. You can claim a lot of things. That's not one of them. They were competing against StackRock's back in the day. It was like Aqua, port shift. Sysdig wasn't really on the scene at the time when we were in the startup realm, but they've picked it up a bit. Anyway, so the other thing is cluster events rule. I think is really interesting. Cube audits. So being able to look at the audit logs and just say, any secret modification in the audit log. No, we're changing that, right? Basically, the admin or this, let's say, agent has admin permissions in your clusters and is saying, if anybody goes to change it, we're going to revoke that right away. We can prevent defensive action, cron job creation, authorization changes. So there's a lot of stuff in here that just works with the Kubernetes API that's really useful. I think just the detect rules alone on this stuff is really cool. Core DNS poisoning, for example, this is it's an OWASP one, right? Core DNS was one of the things that get called out in the OWASP standards for Kubernetes, just to say, hey, we're going to prevent it. And yep, that's it. If anybody goes and tries to change any of the core DNS files or the DNS files, then, you'll get notified of it. Like that's big for teams. So I think this is really a good feature. Pod standards, like I said, there are the profiles. So here's how to create them. You can create new pod security standards. These are the 3 that ship by default with the Kubernetes versions now.
Cool.
And then my guess is that this is basically your CI/CD scan to do your build and deploy blocking, right? So
what is this then?
So
like,
this is my guess is that like you're basically saying, hey, we're going to block with a fatal Docker file. So a Docker file scan severity or a vulnerability level severity. We're going to say, this is just going to be the test run.
I guess my question is, where does this block?
So I think that you have to still set up the integration with it. So when we go to runtime, there's nothing here. I think that you do have to basically set it up in your CI/CD service.
Oh, do you think there's an agent for? Is there an agent for CI/CD?
Yeah. So image name, image ID, image tags. Like I basically think that we're specifying the build. Okay. So here they all are. CI/CD. Oh. Okay. So here's the vulnerability information. This is interesting because this just showed up because I ran the scan. So okay. So this makes sense now. Now we're getting somewhere. Right. Image layers, CIS benchmark fails, avoid sudo command. This is cool. Packages and licenses, I think, is a very interesting feature, right? Being able to go and say, hey, here are all the licenses associated with it. So I do think that this is interesting. This is probably pulled from a lot of the SBOMs. I know Boaz is watching, so I think, Boaz, that's a pretty cool one I think we should talk about at ACS. I also think that image layers and something like a Docker Slim, which shows you what is and isn't being used so that people can slim it down. I think it is a security feature. It can be pitched as a security feature, but a lot of people see it as an operational feature, right? And then exposure, I'm assuming that this would look at the ports or the configuration, but I'm not completely sure.
Or just exposed ports. Yeah, that's what I would have thought.
Yeah, I also think it's very weird that this is in the CI/CD tab.
Right. Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Like I looked at what was highlighted over there and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Am I seeing that right?
Yeah, so the first time I ran this, basically I came into risk assessment because I was going through CI/CD, had nothing there, right? So you're kind of going down, figuring it out. And I'm like, okay, this is installed. Let me run a scan then. So this doesn't automatically scan anything for you, which is also counterintuitive. You'd think it would just go and say, hey, here's all the stuff in your cluster. No, you have to scan for it, which is pointed, but also what if I don't know what to scan for? Then just, I don't know. I screwed up. So it's a little sad. So yeah, once you scan it, I'm like, okay, I'll go in here and look at these vulnerabilities. And then I'm seeing like, there's no vulnerabilities on this side. So I go to dashboard and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Why is this not showing up here either? Anyways, no clue to go to CI/CD. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's a runtime scan. I'm assuming that, when they say runtime scan, they're just basically pulling all the images that are running and, referencing the vulnerability data. Very interesting. We have trusted signers here as well. So this really does have, so you have a trust profile. We can say, specific signatures are allowed, CI/CD plugins.
There we go.
Prerequisites. Yeah. So service role. You set up, my understanding is you set up the CI/CD rules, then you set it up to integrate with your Docker Hub account, for example, and it will just go and look at what's checked in, do a scan and say, no, you can't run this, or this can't be run in the environment. And it will block it. That's my understanding, but still the workflow is a little funky. Anyways, so for the last part, I want to show you a little bit of why it was kind of annoying to set up.
Okay.
So let's go. It's going to bring me back to the cluster controllers. We're going to delete this. So not only do you have to delete it, but you have to run a bunch of, yes, I want to delete it all. So when I connect a new cluster, let's say I'd call it C9K again, because I don't want to type out the real name. Go down to a generic Kubernetes cluster. We go to the GKE. We say we want Kubernetes security, API security. Yeah, okay. If the controller is already installed, please uninstall the previous version. I'm like, did they put that there because so many people delete it and reinstall it and delete it and reinstall it that they've had to do this? Because typically it's like first time doing it, like first install, do this way. Second install, do this. Prerequisites. This is what I should have looked at. At least 4 nodes with 6 gig of memories and 2 vCPUs.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Heavy.
It's not a hobby out of the box.
Yeah. I mean, my Google bill for this cluster is $600 a month. Wild.
Okay. Yeah.
Good thing I only have it up for a week.
Sponsors.
Yeah. So ad secure, you basically go, you would label it. So this is what I think I screwed up is I clicked this. I said, I want to label all namespaces, but I have a feeling it didn't work properly, which is fine. But this is the other thing. So the other issue I had with this that took me a 20-minute workaround was you download the installer. I don't know if you can see this. It installs, right? Fine. It asked for OpenSSL version 3.3.6 or something like that. And Red Hat and our company computers use an open source version of SSL or a different version of SSL that I can't change. So it won't let me run this cluster. So I had to go into Google, pull up a console, upload the file into the console, make all the connections, download all the packages to be able to run kubectl in the GKE console, and then apply it. Which I'm just saying, if you're a container security company, you probably should package everything in a container so that I can just fire up Docker and run it. Like you can run it anywhere. Because I think the worst thing I hate doing is installing something and then having it say, hey, you need this package, you need this package, you need this package. Like the whole point of containers is to stop doing that. Right? That's my other issue that I had with it. Again, install bundle, it's all fine. It's a script that you run. But again, I haven't seen any of the configuration files. I'm sure that it's there in the help button that I have to go in to see exactly what it's doing in the cluster. But, you know, Helm chart would be nice. Be able to see what it's doing on the cluster would be nice. Being able to say like, hey, I want Istio would be great. So, yeah, hold on. Let me get rid of this real quick. Detach, delete it. But yeah, again, so you're going through this. You say Kubernetes security. What is this? SBOM. So if you want visibility, SBOM, image analysis, runtimes policy. Yeah. API security. Yeah. Sure. I can't type today. Google. Next. But yeah, again, so adding network security using Istio. If you want network security, you have to install Istio, which is crazy. Anyways, I'm curious what people think in the chat. Thanks for honestly making it through 1 hour and 7 minutes. This was a long show. It's the first one of the year, and we've had a lot to talk about. So it's been fun. I personally just wanted to dig into that because, you know, you go to these shows, you see the marketing that happens around these products, and I'm always like, how do they claim those features? Like, you can say it, but can you actually implement it? And I think there's a big disconnect sometimes with a lot of the projects. That being said, I think that they do policies really well. I'm just curious as to how it's integrated, right? I think the more that you try to become a container workload protection platform, the more diluted and convoluted a lot of the policy rules and information become. So it's a tough challenge for engineers. And there's a reason why the Palos, the Aquas, and I'll throw in ACS, let's say, are appreciated. It's tough. Yeah, no problem, boys.
There we go. I thought that was good though. Good deep dive on it. Does look a little complicated, a little bit, but there's always it's such a challenge to say you do all the things that they said they were going to do. Hence the reason you dove in again and was like, what? Like we went from what we thought was way too simple last year to like, well, not way too complicated, but let's call it ambitious. And powered by something that you may or may not actually want.
Yeah. And I'll finish with the last thought of, we get internal comments when Red Hatters see the ACS dashboard of, wow, this thing's ugly as hell. when you go into the vulnerability information, you see it just has a wealth of information to give you a proper risk assessment, but there's a lot there. And if you're not used to security, you're overwhelmed. And that's kind of how I feel every time I go into a new security dashboard. There was a couple of comments at Cloud SecurityCon, like, oh, a lot of these dashboards are looking similar in how they report things. And I'm like, good. I think that's good for the industry overall. I think it's good for people. I don't want people doing dashboards that are completely different. yeah, so I'm happy that things are consolidating around this standard. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. Tune in 2 weeks. We're back in 2 weeks, right?
You got it.
Yeah, so we're back in 2 weeks. Steve's going to be doing a Pulumi demo. I'm going to be fresh off a skiing trip, so I'll have goggle burns. Don't laugh at me, please.
What day will that be? Well, will I be back in Toronto? I think it's possible I will be back.
There you go.
So maybe we'll do it live. Who knows?
Who knows? Until then, I'm Mike Foster. He's Steve Shiger. And thanks for joining the show.